coming right up, we have a presentation on the topic of implementing zero trust within fintech. Faced with the escalation and significance of large profile breaches, the fintech community leads many organizations in adopting zero trust principles. In this session, our speaker will transfer lessons learned and identify significant opportunities for reducing attack surface in fintech organizations. For this, we're pleased to have with us Mr. Nathanael Iversen from Illumio.
Hello, my name's Nathanael Iversen, and it's my pleasure to be with you this morning, early for you and about noon for me on the west coast of the United States. At Illumio, we've done quite a bit of work with leading financial firms across the world, whether that's large banks that operate internationally like Citibank or perhaps like BNP Paribas, stock exchanges, custodial banks of various sizes. And all of them have come to us primarily because of a need to have better control over how things move inside their data centers, inside their partner networks, and inside their extended systems. Put simply, zero trust is more of a framework, it's a model, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking about the world. And it primarily encompasses some ideas that have been with us for some time in security, but which we've learned to appreciate and to take deeper and deeper into the data center. It encompasses ideas like assuming breach, instead of assuming that we could never be compromised, but to assume that we could actually be compromised. And if we were, how resilient would our systems and our posture be? This comes up a lot in terms of the idea of least privilege, which is an old security principle that just says that people and systems should not be able to get to more things than they need to. You give them the least possible privilege. And the goal is to end up applying these principles across the entire environment. The reason why fintech organizations are moving towards zero trust is because of the increased complexity and the breakdown of some of the traditional barriers. Just in this past year, we've seen far more people working from home, working remotely, taking company laptops to places for long periods of time where they've never been before. And so this increased attack surface of things being in different environments has caused organizations to realize that they need to shift posture. They need to change the rules of engagement for how endpoints communicate with each other, how they communicate with servers, how servers communicate with each other, and how to ensure that high-profile breaches do not happen. You see, the way that most of these high-profile breaches work is that it starts when something gets into a relatively insignificant portion of the enterprise. That could be a single user laptop, perhaps through a spear phishing campaign or something else of the kinds that we've seen in the news, but it could just as easily be somebody compromising something like a web camera or some Internet of Things device that frankly doesn't have an enterprise grade security posture. The danger is not so much that that camera is compromised or even the single laptop, but that something could spread rapidly throughout the entire organization. And this calls into question how least privilege are these different things. If we have endpoints, how far can they reach? If we have an IP camera that's on the network because it needs to be, how much latitude does it have to move around and connect inside the network? These are the questions that implementing zero trust inside of a fintech firm is meant to address. Now, to understand zero trust, probably the leaders in thinking about that space is the analyst firm Forrester. And they've done quite a bit of work over the last 10 years to break out the ideas of zero trust, this least privilege concept, and then map them into several different pillars that could be implemented by a fintech organization. And you can see that they've broken that down whether you want to apply this principle of least privilege across a variety of different things. You want to apply it across networks, you want to apply it across your data, your workloads and the endpoints, the things with hinges that people type on. You want to use it on people and on devices. And in each of these areas, there's opportunities to provide zero trust or least privilege controls that help to reduce the speed and the the effectiveness of malware inside an organization. And of course, for this to be deployed on an enterprise-wide basis, things like orchestration and automation are necessary to tie these things together at the kind of hyperscale that we see inside of large fintech firms. If you're not familiar with Zero Trust or Forrester's work and want to obtain it, I would encourage you to visit the Illumio website. We have an agreement with Forrester that allows us to distribute the entire report. So if you don't have a way to get that, you don't subscribe to Forrester, by all means, visit Illumio and just make the arrangements to download the research, and you'll be able to have that for yourself. So the interesting thing about Zero Trust, when Forrester did this research, their lead analyst, Dr. Chase Cunningham, who is really the father of this space, if you will, he observed that Zero Trust is strategically focused on addressing lateral threat movement within the infrastructure by using microsegmentation. And that micro is the interesting part. The thing is, these ideas of least privilege are ones that we've had in security for a long time. All of the fintechs hearing my voice right now do something to segment their environment. But it's that micro, it's the smallness, it's the idea that we need to take a principle that we've believed for a long time and use it at greater granularity to shrink it down. Instead of saying I'm protecting my dev and my prod environment, I need to be able to protect something as small as a single server, a single application, and put a ring or a fence around just that tiny thing. That way I know that it's not going to have a lot of attack surface to all of the other things in my data center. And as we've done this for organizations around the globe, helping them to segment their payment systems, their SWIFT infrastructure, PCI infrastructure, and other critical systems in the data center, we've learned that there are a couple of key elements that need to be focused on. The first of them is that you're going to need a map. It turns out that if you want to tightly control how systems are talking to each other, the first thing you need to know is how do those systems communicate to each other at all? And so you'll need to have a map, a good application dependency map that allows you to see how things communicate and then model and test a segmentation policy. You don't want to break things. You don't want to make rules that keep critical systems from interacting. And so having a way to model and test that policy on the map is critical. And what you ultimately want to do is get to a policy that does put rings or fences around small things like individual servers, individual applications, critical business functions, and keeps them separate from all of the other things. So when you get a map and have the ability to see the applications in context, this whole thing gets to be quite a bit easier. And it helps you to answer questions like, who's connecting to which systems? Where are my apps running? How are they communicating? Do I want A and B to communicate? If so, how and on what basis? And it helps tremendously to be able to see this, to implement zero trust controls. At the end of the day, segmentation is about reducing the attack surface. If you can take all of the hundreds or even thousands or tens of thousands of systems that are in a modern fintech data center and begin to put rings and fences around groups of servers, individual services, and the important things in the data center, all of a sudden, if something were to happen in the environment, perhaps the system is compromised like this one on the lower left of the slide, with good segmentation in place, that's contained. It's held within the boundary and unable to move laterally across the data center to infect other machines. So this principle of zero trust, when implemented inside of a fintech firm, helps greatly in reducing the risk of a high-profile breach. Forrester, in their research, concluded that zero trust applied in the network would reduce an organization's exposure by 37%, and that they would reduce their overall security costs by 31% simply because all kinds of paths that don't need to be open would be closed. And if those paths are closed, you don't have to protect them in other ways. And so this is very good news, and certainly a reason why many fintech firms around the globe have taken on an approach like this. At Illumio, we've helped a number of large banks to do this, very large SaaS companies, and literally millions of workloads around the globe. It is our pleasure to introduce Zero Trust to you in a fintech context. And if we can be helpful to you on the journey, we hope that you'll visit our website and find out more. Thank you very much.